Hey, listeners, welcome back to the 9 Arts podcast. And quick reminder, we started this podcast as a way to bring the heart and soul of our state of the art report to you through unique stories about how to create meaningful art experiences in the built environment. Today, our guest on the show is Sarah McGarry. She is a principal at Stantec and really brings the perspective of communication, collaboration, and conversation as core principles to developing a really unique place. I want to tell a little story about Sarah. We first got to work together on a project called Wheeler Trigg O'Donnell, a new office that was being built downtown Denver more than a decade ago. And Sarah was so thoughtful through that process. So we had a sculpture going in. She designed a niche that was built to the precise size, 20 inches deep, to hold this giant 6-foot tall sculpture made of glass stalks of wheat. She put in the lighting detail. And what's so wonderful about this particular place that she built and every project that Sarah works on is the level of finish, thoughtfulness, detail, and refinement that her team brings to the table. When everything is that thoughtful, you really don't even notice it. You're just able to focus on the feeling of being in a place that someone has put so much care and attention towards. So I'm very excited to introduce our listeners to Sarah McGarry today. Please check her out on LinkedIn and learn more about the work that they're doing at Stantec on their website. Thanks for joining.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have Sarah McGarry, principal at Stantec, with us. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Sarah.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So tell our listeners a little bit more about what you do, how you got to where you are, and what you're working on right now that you're excited about.
Yeah. So I am a principal, as you said, within Stantec, but I have grown up in our interior design studio. I've been with Stantec for 14 years now. And so how I've kind of gotten to where I've gotten has been that I started doing design mostly corporate workplace. That's been my bread and butter. With that, I've kind of worn a lot of hats in my role over the years. And so I've started taking on a lot of our business development and just leadership within the studio. And so that's kind of how I've landed where I have. No 2 days are the same. Some days I'm doing design, some days I'm doing project management, some days I'm out of trying to uh, chase after proposals and new work. So it's always fun in that way that, like I said, no 2 days are the same. And some things that I'm working on right now that I would say I'm excited about. We're working with a large tech company that's just starting to get going here in terms of construction. So we got through design and we actually did design for them throughout the last year. So 2020, in the midst of the pandemic. It's been just really fun for me to kind of have this live case study of what the future is going to kind of look like post pandemic for the workplace, particularly kind of what we're seeing in the tech realm. Then I'm working with a handful of law firms, one of which we're working on alongside with 9 going to be a really unique take on kind of what we have traditionally seen the law firm realm be. They are going from over 100,000 square feet to just over 60,000 square feet. And in part, because they're right sizing. But the other piece of it that's really interesting is that they're kind of looking at the post pandemic future of the workplace and what that looks like. And they've changed so that they'll have, not everyone will have dedicated offices. A good handful still will, but there's been a real shift for them culturally. This is sort of a renaissance for them in many ways, where they're kind of shifting mindset of having this dedicated office space be the most important thing, where now we're doing a wonderful work cafe and meeting areas and a multifunctional space that now are probably more important than the individual workspace. So much more so about the culture and the overall organization versus each individual and how much real estate they have for themselves. So really big shift for them, and that's been another kind of fun one that's carried out throughout the last year.
Well, it sounds like you're seeing a lot of trends and reshaping of the industry that you work in. Could you tell us a little bit more about themes you're seeing in those trends and what they are. You mentioned the law firm kind of shifting away, focusing on culture. You mentioned you've got a tech client that you've been working with. So, are there any broad themes that you're seeing that kind of span industries that people are thinking about when they're redesigning office spaces right now?
Absolutely. I would say I think the biggest thing that we are seeing is sort of that mentality of shifting from the individual and their working space into more of what impact the workplace can have on the overall culture and how the workplace can support the overall culture and kind of message that you're sending to be it clients, people that you're trying to recruit to come work for you, and or just for overall kind of retention and internal kind of cultural impact. And so it's not so much about the individual workspace anymore. It's more so about the overall office and how it can support that. The conversation has really shifted there to orienting people into more of like a team room configuration, or not just these wide open offices with as many people, but it's more what tools can we set up for them that help them to do their best work.
Tell us a little bit more about how you get started when you're going about designing a workplace. Could you give an example of what that process looks like and then the result of some of those spaces you've created that you think are exceptionally memorable?
We always start every project, even before we start looking at buildings. We anything like that, we'll do what we call a visioning session. It's really an interactive session with the client to understand what their goals are for the project, what their vision is, who they want to be, how they want to portray themselves, and then also just get a high level understanding of kind of what they're after from a look and feel perspective. Because we find that, I could say, I want my space to be warm and bright, and you may instantly have a visual that you think of what that means. But when we click through a lot of different images, that really can vary. So we also do where we just, click through a dozens and dozens of imagery and just get people's gut reaction to them. Love it, hate it, what are they not liking about that. But that sort of sets the tone for our design team. And so we take all that information, all that we hear, and kind of synthesize that into an overall design concept that we then present back to the client and make sure that they're on board and that we've heard things correctly and we're hitting on the right key points. And we have imagery that we include as part of that too, so that there are some visual cues as to kind of how things might start to progress. And that really is something that we reference throughout the entire design process. And then as we're working through the design process, I would say it's referring back to that, but it's also, we'll start working through 3D imagery and things will just evolve from there. We've gotten really, really great with visualization, that you can literally fly through a space now, and we're able to do that with the 3D software that we use for all of our modeling.
What an incredible tool and such a shift from how we were doing things 10 years ago.
Absolutely. It's really evolved, and I feel like the other great benefit is that we really bring the client along with us throughout the process, and I think that's something that we've seen shifting. We're because they are able to see everything three dimensionally and really kind of get a full picture of what the space is going to look like as we're working through the design process. We're able to have a lot of smaller meetings and kind of iterate through things with them as a partner versus it being this thing where we get to the end and there's like an unveiling and that someone's looking at you going, well, I'm not sure that I like that. And then you're going back and reworking things. The process is much more collaborative with, the client. And then also any other team members that we bring on board, be it somebody like an art consultant, the AV consultant, we'll sometimes have environmental graphic designers that jump in. So it really allows for all of us as we're kind of working through that process together to be involved in it.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about how art and culture align with the design or the brand vision in those early stages and what the result can be if that's done really well?
For some clients I think that we work with, they come into it knowing that kind of that art is going to be an important part of their space because they may have an existing collection or something that we're designing around. Whereas others, I think we get through midway through the process and they realize we need a little something more, and or will start allocating, this would be a good spot for some larger impact, and we and or we're kind of allocating walls of like we need to do something here, we need to do something here. And so that's when it becomes pretty apparent of we need to have either some sort of environmental graphic or some sort of art piece. And so for us, I think it's always most successful when we can kind of have that is part of the discussion early on so that it is really really integrated. Our clients that we work with that have some sort of existing art collection are usually the ones that are better about kind of having that conversation sooner. Sometimes it just takes us kind of showing, okay, when they see things three-dimensionally, we need to add that third layer onto this.
Do you have any thoughts on the business benefits or goals of incorporating art and perhaps even social impact or the community engagement side?
The social impact and community engagement side are huge because I think for our clients, this is where they can tell that additional story. I mean, we can create a beautiful design that can support it, but as people come through the space, if there's artworks or pieces that are supportive of maybe it's different cultures or particular artists that are that they're trying to support or make a message of, this is a spot that they can absolutely do it, and it's that added piece of storytelling. And as they walk somebody through the space and they can point things out, I think just from a messaging standpoint, they're able to kind of show that additional layer of their brand because of what pieces they may select to showcase. Maybe we put something in a conferencing center that we know is going to be a spot that we're going to have a lot of visitors and guests because we want to have that conversation with them or be able to point that out. Art's sort of that final added layer that we need to kind of support our design. It's another piece of the story, and it just allows for clients to have more depth to their space, more interest, both visually, but also again from that storytelling piece, because each piece of art has its own story.
Is there a project that comes to your mind when you think of perhaps a work of art that inspired conversation or really kind of lit up the room in a conference center? Is there a particular space that comes to your mind where that happened and you kind of saw the results?
Well, one that always comes to mind, and you're going to laugh at this one, Martha, because it's a project that we both worked on like over a decade ago, was Wheeler Trigg O'Donnell, a law firm. And it was, I think, for both of us, a really big project and very exciting. And they had a wonderful collection and really, really valued art. And so for us, that was really exciting in terms of how we could integrate it, and then also just what new pieces they selected versus which ones they brought over into their new space. They would, every meeting we had, there was always a conversation of, oh, somebody hates this piece or somebody loves this piece. And I think that was what was so great about it, was that it got people talking. And while every partner didn't align on all of the pieces that was their favorite or that was not, we had that breadth of variety throughout the space, and it made for conversation. It was just exciting because the art was actually the thing that got people talking as they walked into the space.
Well, it was an exciting collection to work on and to put together because nothing in that collection is what I would call easy or safe. Things were generally more provocative. Every work had a story. It was a very eclectic collection, as you said. And even some of the partners and the executives who worked there had connections with some of the artists. For example, Laura Anderson Barbata, who was one of the artists who had a big charcoal drawing in the conference center. It's just cool to have that full circle appreciation and real world application for an attorney's mindset and what they do and the way they think, and applying that to seeing someone's creative vision.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, it's kind of funny to reference something that, like I said, when we first did their build out was almost 10 years ago now, but it's one that will always stick out with me because I think it was probably one of the first projects that I did where the client was just equally invested in kind of making sure that the art was really integrated within the space. It was one of the first projects that I really saw, where it made such a difference and made such an impact and was such a part of the story.
Well, is working with artists and artwork one of the most creative aspects of your projects, or is there creativity in other parts that you're doing as well?
I think there's creative aspects in what we're doing just on the design side. But I will say, I think our team is able to pull inspiration from some of the same places that the artists do, and or from the artists. We've had to kind of dig in and do our own research on the design team to find artists that kind of fit what they're trying to go after from kind of a diversity, inclusion, and support standpoint. And so that's been really fun for us and educational for us, and has taken our design team down some different paths, just kind of as we've been looking at all of these different artists. So it's been just sort of a fun exploratory piece for our team.
Thinking back from the past 12 months, we've all learned a lot in this COVID pandemic era. What elements of the past 12 months are you going to bring with you into the future, and what are you leaving behind?
Oh gosh, um, a lot. I think one of the things that I'm definitely bringing into the future is kind of an idea of finding some more balance and flexibility in life, and how that can hopefully help my work too. I think prior to last year, we were all just running at Mach speed, and there was, no stop. And so I think this has kind of taught us to take some time to slow down and, stop and smell the roses, so to speak, and in a good way. And I think that will hopefully positively impact my work. Now, I will say on the flip side is that there's harder to draw a line in the sand between working hours and when you're at home. So that's something I'm going to have to be better about. When you're at home is a little bit different than when you used to be at the office and then come home. So drawing that line in the sand is important to me.
That's great. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being with us today. You're clearly a leader in your industry, a great advocate for the arts, and I've definitely been honored to be able to work with you on a number of projects over the years, and can say that it's so refreshing to have an architecture and design team that's so thoughtful about what they're doing and how they're approaching spaces and how the art can impact and influence those spaces. So thanks for your advocacy. And could you please share with our listeners where they can find you and where they can learn more about you and your work if they're interested?
Best place to go to is our Stantec website, which is just www.stantec.com. That's probably the easiest way. But I was going to say, otherwise, I'm always here. Welcome email or call too. And I'm sure you'd be happy to share my contact info with everybody, Martha. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah McGarry, on the show today with Stantec. Thanks for being here, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
yes, likewise.